the tragedy which we can experience as most fresh is the Holocaust. And believe it or not, there's some controversy. They celebrate Yom HaShoah. The day of the Holocaust commemoration is the end of Nisan. It's in April, the beginning of May. And some Jews feel that the day to commemorate the Holocaust is Tisha B'Av, the same day that we commemorate all other tzadus, which is in 2 weeks from tomorrow. And there's a big argument about it. Should the Holocaust have its own day, or should the Holocaust not have its own day? And the reason for the question is, do we put all mourning into this season, or do we mourn seasonally? You know, when something happened in April, you should remember it in April, not in August, because that's the time you set aside for it. But what I wanted to say about the Holocaust, which is to me very meaningful, is the following. What do you do when you survive a tragedy? What do you do when you survive a tragedy? Do you look back or do you look forward? Elie Wiesel, may he rest in peace, had a very personal relationship with the Rebbe. And the more you learn about it, the more you realize how involved he was. He met the Rebbe in the early 1960s, and the Rebbe was very important to him. The Rebbe helped him heal. It was more than 15 years after the Holocaust. But because of the Rebbe, he got married. He wasn't going to get married. He said, I can't bring a Jewish child into this world. And the Rebbe insisted to get married and have children. And the Rebbe was a therapist in a way. But Elie Wiesel describes in one of his books an argument that he had with the Rebbe, where he says to the Rebbe, I want you to teach me how to cry. And the Rebbe says, I won't teach you how to cry. I'll teach you how to sing. And he says to the Rebbe, how could you ignore what we've been through? How could you act as if it didn't occur? How could you stop crying? How could you allow it to rest? And the Rebbe told him very strong words. The Rebbe said, if we cry, we continue what our enemies tried to do. Our role is to heal. And you don't heal by looking back, you heal by looking forward. Which is another area of controversy socially and even religiously, but it's social debate. How should Jewish people react after the Holocaust? And I believe, this is my own take, based on religious writings, but it's my own personal opinion. This is how I feel about the Holocaust. As long as there's one living survivor, we're not allowed to look back, we have to look forward. When the survivors are gone, we'll look back. Jews never forget. Jews never forget. But Jews are never stuck. You see, we're not still there. And the reason we're not still there is because the reaction of the Jewish people after the war was to move forward, which is the only way. You have to remember. But you can only afford to remember if the remembering does not interfere with forward progress. So it turns out to be very ironic. Right after the tragedy, you forget about it. You heal. When the tragedy is a memory, then you remember. This is my sense of how Jewish tradition has always dealt with tragedy. We've been through many tragedies, but we survived them. We survived them not by looking back, we survived them by looking forward. And then when they're a memory, in other words, when we're no longer traumatized by it, then we never forget. Because our memories are supposed to project us forward, not inhibit us, not hold us back. So this is a season of mourning, these 3 weeks. And many tragedies which occurred during all seasons of the year are crunched into these 3 weeks. We have prayers that we say to commemorate a variety. We talk about the Crusades, we talk about the blood libel, we talk about the burning of the holy books, all on Tisha B'Av. They didn't all occur on the 9th of, it didn't all occur in August, they occurred in May, they occurred in June, they occurred in April. But we put them into this is a period of sadness. And what I'm trying to present is that although the basis for this sadness is historic events, there's historic reasons why we mourn during this period, but all events of sadness is crunched into this time because it's a season. It's the time. And here's the question. Now, what kind of religion is this? For sadness, you can be an atheist. Not to believe in God and be miserable. You don't need a God to be miserable. What does it mean we have a season? We have a season. We have a designated time where we mourn, where we're sad. And of course, in the holy books it's written that when Mashiach comes, when the Messiah comes, we don't interrupt the sadness. We turn it around. This is going to be a 3-week carnival after Mashiach comes. Non-stop partying from Shiva, the 22 and a half, then it's not going to be 3 weeks, it'll be 22 and a half days of non-stop celebrating our survival and our recovery and our healing and our health. But what does it mean spiritually? What does it mean spiritually that we have a season of sadness and mourning? And I want to give you something to consider, which I think has religious value and it also has social and psychological value. I think it's a very, very important lesson. And I also think it's very uniquely Jewish. And that is, people are not always in the mood. You know that? People are not always in the mood. Sometimes you're very excited, you're very turned on, you're very emotive, you're in a very, very positive state. For whatever. To pray, to play, to entertain, or to be entertained. People sometimes find themselves in very motivated dispositions. There are times that you feel very close to God, for whatever reasons. And in those times you want to pray, in those times you want to study, in those times you want to do a favor for a neighbor and all the rest. And then sometimes you're just off. You're just off. The passions of life subside and you go through what amounts to a cold spell, you know? Let me say this in Mystikai, okay? Let me say this in Kabbalistai. I make up words. I have a license. I can't tell you where I got it, but I make up words as I go. In mysticism, there's an expression called gadlut and katnut. Gadlut means very well developed, very sophisticated, and katnut means severely underdeveloped, very immature. So gadlut would mean where a person's brain is working really well, a person's heart and senses are really, really sharp, and they're integrated. That's a time that you feel very rich as a person. You feel empowered, you feel strong, you feel smart, you feel confident, you feel motivated, you feel social even. Katnut means when you're withdrawn, where the brain is a little heavy, a little rusty, and the heart and the senses are disappointing, and you withdraw. This is psychologically true, it's also religiously true. The mystical concept of sadness is katnut. The mystical idea of being sad is where you are withdrawn. Your mind and your heart and your senses are not functioning at full capacity. They may not even be functioning. You just feel very, 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 you feel like you have a dry taste in your mouth. Everything is a labor. Everything is hard. There's no energy. And usually when people suffer, that's what happens. When life is good, you feel rich, you feel strong, you feel empowered. And when life is not so good, so you feel very, very withdrawn. But in Kabbalah, they blame it on God. You know, when God is closer to us, we feel powerful and rich and strong. When God hides from us, which is how we understand this season, God is hiding from us, we experience a sense of withdrawal. We experience a sense of our own diminution, psychological and spiritual diminution. We're less than we are at other times. So we're sort of, you know, it's like when you're doing surfing, you know. So when there's a wave, you make yourself into a sail, right? And when the wave breaks, you make yourself into a cannonball. When there's something carrying you, you want to expand yourself as much as possible so that you can be carried. And when there's nothing carrying you, you reduce yourself to as small and as dense a form as possible so that you don't fall off the board, right? That's how it works. This is true in life, and it's true in the calendar. This is the season when you make yourself really, really small because there is no energy and you want to survive that dark period. So where's the lesson? Right? We have a season of sadness. It's technically connected to certain historic events, but if I'm telling you the truth, and I may not be, by the way, but just in case I am, this is a season that's been dedicated to this kind of an experience. What does it mean in a timeless way? What does it mean to everybody? What does it mean after Mashiach comes? When life is great, we're still going to have this season. What does it mean? It means a very simple thing. We're not always on. We're not always on. We're not always incredibly inspired and incredibly impassioned and incredibly motivated. But there's something that you need to remember when you're down. There is something that you need to know when you are spiritually and psychologically off. Don't quit. Don't quit. The timeless message of this season is, what do you do when you're in a bad mood? What do you do when you're in a bad mood? What do you do? Rabbi Reuben wrote the title of yesterday. He gets all the credit for yesterday's talk, by the way. The secret of life. What a question, yeah? You should make the secret of bad moods. What are you supposed to do when you're in a bad mood? Rule number one is really number one. Never make any decisions. And certainly don't make any changes. Because you'll always sabotage yourself. It's a constant. When you're in a bad mood, leave it. Leave it. You want to make changes? Wait till you're feeling better. Now is not the time to question your life, because nothing is good. So what you do is, when you find yourself in such a condition, you say, okay, now I'm going to get through this. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to be careful not to be stupid, not to sabotage, not to cut off my nose to spite my face because I don't like myself. So there is a message here. And the message is that people figure out that you continue living your life when you're in the worst condition, because it will get better. But in order for it to get better, when this negative condition passes, I need to keep on doing what I'm doing. This is the message of this season. It's a season that's written into our calendar, which is associated with sadness. What do you do when you're sad? Don't change anything. Do your best. It'll be better tomorrow. It'll be better tomorrow.